So I just want to say hello and welcome to the Ask Me Anything panel. My name is Amelia. I am one of the fellows in the Office of Admission, and I am currently a senior here in the college, and I will also be moderating this panel. Of course, while we would have preferred to have you on campus and talk to you in person, we really are grateful for the technology and the opportunity to engage with you today. We have a really exciting session prepared for you based on some of the questions that you pre-submitted. But before we get started, we have a few pieces of information or housekeeping that we want to share with you. So at this time, everyone in the session is muted, except for the Emory community members, so myself, as well as the admissions counselors and our panelists. So please remain muted to ensure that all our participants are able to hear the panelists while we're talking. The Zoom chat function, it's kind of a hard phrase to say, will be available for y'all to use whenever you want, so feel free to chat with each other and chat away. I also want to let y'all know that in addition to our panelists, we have two admissions counselors joining us. The first is Scott Allen, Vice Dean of Admissions, and the second is Maddie Simon, Assistant Dean of Admissions. So they're going to go ahead and quickly introduce themselves.
You can take it away, Scott.
Yeah. Thank you, Amelia, and welcome everyone. I'll simply be in the background helping Maddie with logistics. But as Amelia said, I'm Vice Dean. I'm one of the 30 admission officers. I handle New York City as a territory, and then East Asia. You've got great Emory students with you tonight, and have fun and ask whatever you'd like. I'm going to disappear in the background now.
I love that, Scott. And hello, everyone. My name is Maddie Simon. As Amelia said, Assistant Dean of Admission. I cover the territory of the great Garden State of New Jersey, and I also help Scott a little bit with East Asia as well. And I'm also the manager of the Emory Student Ambassador. So the lovely, lovely panelists that you are about to meet and get to talk to, please use them as resources, get to know them better, ask those tough questions, ask the fun questions, and let's enjoy the next 45 minutes. Amelia, back to you.
Awesome, thank you so much. And so just kind of as a quick friendly reminder, we do have pre-submitted questions that we're going to be answering for you guys, but if at any point during the session you have a question that you want to be answered, please send them directly in the chat to Maddie Simon. How you do that is if you look at the bottom of the chat function, there's like a little box where you can drop down and directly click Maddie Simon. It says Maddie Simon at Emory University. So please, if you have a question, just submit it directly to him in that chat function. Before we kind of go into the rest of the housekeeping, we do kind of want to take a second just to acknowledge all the people that have been affected by natural disasters over the past couple weeks and the past couple months. We want you to know that with the panelists and the admission staff, we really are in all of your thoughts. And so we really do thank everyone for being here, but we give a really special thank you for people who are able to find time in their day amidst all of this to kind of join us today. But in addition to that, as you may know, the session is going to end promptly at 6:45 Eastern time. And we are aware, as I'm sure a lot of you are, there are occurrences of Zoom hacking. We have taken every precaution against this for this session with the waiting room and things like that. But should something occur outside of our control, we will immediately conclude the session and the Office of Admission will follow up with you by email to ensure that any remaining questions that you may have can be answered. In case anything like this occurs, we really want to thank you in advance for your patience and understanding as we navigate what I like to call this new-ish technology, because it's not super new, but I still learn something new every day about it. But as I said, so we can go ahead and get this panel started, I am currently joined by several students here. But what we first want to know is just a little bit about you guys. So we would love if y'all could just send in the chat like where you're from, where you're coming from, so that we can just see what's going on. I'm seeing some New England people, ooh, Missouri, New York. Oh, going so quickly now.
Friends. And from Chapel Hill. I'm from
ATL.
I'm from Cary, so whoever said Chapel Hill, what's up?
Toronto. I saw Toronto on there. I'm also from Toronto.
My ATL people. That's where I'm from, just if you hadn't figured that out yet. Okay, wow.
The country.
So much geographic diversity here. I'm loving it. Okay, so thank you guys all so much for sending in the chat. Feel free to keep sending anything you want in the chat, where you're from, anything that you guys want to say or comment on. And just want to send, of course, again, a big thank you for spending your time with us today. We realize that it's been difficult to adjust to a fall that no one really expected due to COVID-19, but we are grateful that you decided to spend a little bit of your evening, your morning, your afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you with us. So we're now going to begin the Ask Me Anything panel with panelist introduction. So I'll kick us off and then Ben will follow me. But as I said, my name is Amelia. I'm a senior here in the College studying environmental science. I'm from Decatur, Georgia. A couple things that I do on campus is one, I'm a resident hall advisor, so that's why I have a ZAC background, because you can see my bed. The other is I'm co-president of Habitat for Humanity with one of the panelists here, so you'll find out that soon. So Ben, can you kick us off with the rest of our introductions?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's so great to see all of you. As Amelia said, my name is Ben. I am a third year junior in the college. I study history and economics. I'm originally from Toronto, and that's actually where I am right now. So I'll talk a little bit about what it's like to be an Emory student online. And I'm involved in a lot of things on campus. I don't want to get into everything, but just a few. I'm involved in Volunteer Emery, which is the largest student program on campus, and also the co-president of the Climate Reality Project.
Hello everyone, my name is Dario. I'm originally from Queens, New York. I'm a senior in the college. I'm double majoring in biology and computer science. I am in fact Amelia's co-president for Habitat for Humanity, and I'm also involved with research on campus. I work in a biochemistry lab.
Hi everyone, my name is Heather. I am a junior at the business school. I'm studying finance and information systems, as well as a double major in quantitative sciences in college. I'm originally from Cary, North Carolina, so I saw some of you guys from North Carolina earlier. Hello. So some things I'm involved with on campus. I'm also a resident advisor like Amelia, so you can kind of see my room in the background. I'm involved in a consulting group on campus and a sorority.
Hello, my name is Ruth. I'm a sophomore, and I am from Red Wing, Minnesota. So anyone from the Midwest, Minnesota, what's up? My major is not declared, but I'm human biology and anthropology, most likely, we'll see. And then a few clubs I'm involved in. I do matriculate on campus. It's a virtual advising where we teach college students to advise low-income, high-achieving high school students. And then the other club I guess I'm pretty involved in is Rathskeller. It's a comedy improv troupe on campus. There are 8 of us. It's very small, but it's a lot of fun, so that's me.
Awesome, thank y'all so much. Okay, so we're gonna get kicked off with our first question, and I think a good first question to start with is, in terms of academics and education, how was the transition from high school into college, and how did you acclimate? I'm gonna ask Heather to sort of kick us off with that question.
Yeah, love to get started. So for me, I came from a really high achieving high school background, and I was doing pretty well. I was pretty top of my class, and so when I got to college, I think I was kind of arrogant coming in, like academically. I thought I was, all that. And so for me, it was really hard. I think when I first got my first exam, and I got a 79 on it, and it was devastating. Like I didn't really study, and I was, had like 5 other classes that really tried to juggle at the same time. So for me, my transition from high school to college was a little rough academically. And so I think the biggest thing for me was learning how to study, how to manage my time, and to juggle my, social life with being, away from home and like eating properly and going to the dining hall and not splurging on desserts all the time. And so there's a lot to juggle at one time. So for me, like really utilizing all the resources that Emery provides for our students was really helpful for me to transition.
Does anyone else want to add anything?
I'll just add that the desserts are really good, so it's hard not to splurge on them.
I agree, those brownies, delish. Okay, if no one else has anything to add, we'll kind of move on to our next question. So this one kind of falls into like academics and education, but what was your favorite class and why? And so Ben, do you mind starting us off?
Sure. There were 2 classes that I've taken that were tied for best class. One of them I took in my sophomore fall, it was a US history class, but it was 20th century US history through the lens of pop music. So like most of our class was just like listening to, like our homework was like Spotify playlist that we had to listen to. And like obviously also reading, but it was just really awesome and really fun to like look at history through a very different lens. And then another amazing class I had was in urban cultural history of Atlanta. So obviously Emory University in Atlanta. But what made this class so special was that we met for 3 hours on a Friday, and we would get to go on field trips every couple of weeks. So unfortunately, it got cut short by COVID because we got sent home in the middle of the semester. But for the first 8 weeks of class, we got to go to the Atlanta History Center. We went on a a tour around the city. We went on a walking tour, all of these really awesome things. So it was a great way both to learn and also just have a great time exploring the city that I've now lived in for 2 years.
Awesome. I realize that I want all of our panelists to answer this question. So Dario, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm actually going to talk about a class I'm in right now because it's a class that I did not expect to find any particular interest in. It's a marine ecology class. So I am a bio major, but I focus more on like molecular stuff. I never took an ecology class. And what makes this class extra, what I'm really getting out of it is that we meet in person, but because of COVID, we meet outside. So once a week, we sit in a circle in well water, and just having that small class engagement is something that I didn't think I'd be getting this semester, which makes me like extra cherish it.
Wow, my as fun as those. I do not get outside in a circle. But I think for me, like mine is kind of nerdy, and I'm really like into accounting and stuff like that, which is why I'm in the business school. So I think my favorite class is also one I'm taking right now. It's a Python class that's applying big data, finance, and accounting principles all in one. And so I get to learn like coding, even though I really suck at it, but like it's really building on my knowledge, but at the same time applying it to things that I already know, like different accounting principles. And so I know not like a lot of people are interested, so I'll keep it short, but the professor's super passionate, so it's really engaging.
I would say my favorite class, I'm taking it right now. It's an interdisciplinary department is the class it's on, the department it's under, but it's called Foundations of Interdisciplinary Studies. So it's very basic class, but I would say one thing that really makes any class you take at college is definitely the professor. And I just absolutely adore Dr. Wakefield. And we've been having some fun reading anything from like Sherlock, Dickens. We're going to start like Plato, like things I just didn't think I would be interested in reading and kind of sound like scary and intimidating, but Dr. Wakefield like presents them in a way that we can break them down and make them very digestible and write about them in different perspectives. A lot of people are coming from a lot of different fields. That's what interdisciplinary studies is. You're drawing from all different sorts of studies and gaining all these sorts of perspectives that just are very invigorating, exciting.
Yeah, and I think I always say that my favorite class outside of my major, because I love my major, but I think like I've taken so many amazing classes that aren't in environmental science. But my favorite class I took outside of environmental science was my first year. It was called East Asian Religion. So it was on Hinduism and Buddhism. And what I really loved about the class is we had 2 TAs. So one was a Buddhist monk and the other was a graduate student from South India who was a Hindu. So it was really cool to like have them lecture and get their sort of firsthand experiences. But our professor also took us into the city of Atlanta and took us to a Buddhist temple and a Hindu temple on a weekend. And like we got to see the practices we had been talking about like in lecture, like and actually like participate in them. But I think the coolest thing was she brought in 3 Emery faculty members on separate occasions. And we did meditation for one class. We watched one of our professors here do something called Kuchipudi dance, which is like an Indian storytelling dance. And then the last one, which I'm completely blanking on right now, but another professor who like went to India and trained with like a famous yogi came back and we did yoga for 3 classes. So I just really loved that not only do we have like such stellar professors that we could find faculty members to like do those things with us in person, but the fact that she took us into the city and kind of brought the culture to the classroom and it wasn't just like lectures. And that was like the most amazing class, one of the most amazing classes I've ever taken outside of my major. So kind of moving into the next question, Ruth, you kind of hit on it a little bit, but talking about professors and how accessible they are, and then also who your favorite professor is. I don't know if you want to keep talking about that professor, if you have another professor that you wanted to talk about.
Oh, for sure. Yes. So my favorite professor, his name is Professor Franzosi, Dr. Franzosi. He was my sociology of advertising professor last year. It was my freshman seminar, which if you become an Emory student as a freshman, you are required to take a freshman seminar. That was mine. And it wasn't about the class material. It was really about getting to know Professor Franzosi. First semester, he invited me over for dinner with the rest of the class. He hosted us. Like, it was very just like this experience that I'm like, wow, I would really not get this if I was not at this small like liberal arts like institution where I can connect with my professors in this really meaningful way. And then I also ended up being invited onto his research team during the second semester of my freshman year, which is also just an opportunity I never expected I would get. So I love Professor Franzosi. He's so fun. He's awesome. I live in Minnesota, so when things were kind of going down in Minneapolis and there was some serious protests, he called me, you know, on my cell phone and was just like, hello, are you okay? It was just like, wow, I have a professor who like really cares about me and my well-being. So that is my favorite professor.
Anyone else have a favorite professor?
Yeah, so mine was from a very different type of course in college. Mine was my organic chemistry professor, Professor Weinschenk, that I took for 2 semesters. Going into college, that was the class that for most like pre-med, pre-health kids is really hyped up to be the one that's going to be the worst. You got to just get through it, put your head down, study. It's going to be the worst experience of your life. On the second day of class, Professor Weinschenk knew every single student's name in the class. The class was like 91 students. It was not a lecture-based class, which I was totally not expecting. He made every effort that every lecture was not just informative, but it was so engaging. Like I going into it, I really thought that I learned best in a lecture type situation, and he like totally changed my mind. Now I think like I'm all about group work, that type of stuff. It's just not how I expected the class to go at all, and it entirely reset my expectations for like what a science lecture type class could be.
I'll take this one as well. First of all, I can't state enough like how many incredible professors I have. Like when I was thinking through this question, it was hard to choose one. But the one I have to choose is actually a professor I have now, who some of you may have heard of her. It's Dr. Carol Anderson, who is like very famous. So look her up. She's been on The Daily Show as like the interviewed guest. She's incredible. So she's teaching me this African-American studies class on voter suppression and voting rights, which is obviously incredibly timely. And not only is she like a best-selling author and always, you know, traveling and going to speaking engagements, but in this class, she will arrange as much time as you need one-on-one to talk through your research paper. Like I had a 30-minute meeting one-on-one with this very well-known, very busy professor, and she brought as much enthusiasm as you can imagine on Zoom, talking through this project with me. So I think that's embodies everything about Emery, that even someone that famous really does care about teaching and cares about her students. So pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna take this question too, because my boss, Maddie Simon, called me out when we were looking through the questions. He's like, Amelia, I know you wanna take this question, because I'm like obsessed with the Emory professors, just in every department and on every level. But my favorite professor is a man named Dr. Anthony or Tony Martin. I've taken 5 classes with him. Like, this is how much I love this man. So he's a geologist, but really an ichnologist, which is basically just like a fancy term for a geologist who studies fossilized burrows. It's very niche. But what I love about him is, I think, again, that idea of just like hands-on experience. Like every class I've taken with him, we've gone on a field trip to the Georgia coast and like gone like to like, because he studies like rocks and geology, so we spent a lot of time like on the Georgia coast looking at the islands and talking about like how climate change and global warming has affected them, as well as just sort of talking about the history of Earth, and then actually like going to those places and like looking at them in person. He also is just like a very funny older guy. Every time he says something, he goes, comments, questions, dreams, and hopes. And it just like, he's just a funny professor. He's an old professor who like has this very niche area of study, but also like really cares about making sure his students understand his content and like actually get to like see it in person. And so like that's my favorite professor, and I will hype him up all day, every day. Follow him on Twitter. Got a great Twitter. Anyway, I digress. I get too excited. Kind of while we're still on this academic train, I'm going to kick a question off to Dario to start talking about research on campus. So how can students get involved in research, but also what type of research opportunities are available for students?
Yeah, so the first thing to say about this is research is by no means restricted to STEM-y type subjects. Like I'm doing research in biochemistry, which is the most like, stereotypically STEM thing you could do, but Ruth already mentioned that she's doing research in totally different fields. In what? Sorry.
Sociology.
Sociology. Yeah. Yep, social science. My friend does research with a history professor and got a writing credit on his most recent book. So there's tons of research opportunities that aren't the traditional pipetting lab experience, but that is my experience. So that's what I'm going to talk about. What I have learned about research at Emory is that it will never just be given to you, but I think that's one of the best things about it, because professors really rely on their undergraduates, and in my experience, they give you a lot of leeway and a lot of responsibility. Like, undergraduates play a major role in the lab that I'm working in. Honestly, like, I was not ready for how much was going to be put on my plate, but I didn't think I'd be ready for it, but hopefully I like to think I am. But yeah, so you'll never just be given a research position where you just like put your name on a form, get matched to the lab. It's always something that you're going to have to go out of your way to find for yourself. But that's what professors are looking for. They're looking for students who are interested in the research and actually want to contribute to the projects. And once you show that interest, I didn't find it very difficult at all to find a position. I was able to find one within like 4 emails to different labs that I was interested in. Got a position, been working there ever since. For some students, like, that may just take a little longer, and we do have an office specifically that helps students get paired up with labs. So if that's something that for some reason you want to have and it's not happening for you, there are resources to help you get matched up with a lab. But in my experience, if you show interest, like genuine interest in what the professor's doing, you won't have a problem getting a position. Also, a quick note I want to make for COVID stuff. Research is still happening on campus. Like, I'm still in my position. I just can't physically go into the lab. But they were able to pivot my role. So instead of doing wet lab stuff, working in the lab physically, now I'm in more of a data processing role where they just gave me some software to learn how to use. And once I do that, in a week or 2, I'll be up and running, helping them, still contributing to the research.
Ruth, I don't know if you want to talk more about your research or.
I mean, I definitely can. It's kind of a very niche project that I'm working on. It's like late 1800s, early 1900s. It focuses on lynchings in Georgia, and specifically the female victims of it's called an outrage, where a woman accuses a man, typically a Black man, of like sexually assaulting her or abusing her in some way, and then that man is lynched. And we look at specifically what happened to the woman after the lynching occurred. Did she remarry? Did she move? Did she have more kids? And all of these things indicate like trends in what actually happened and what incidents, because oftentimes it was more of an accusation and nothing actually occurred. And then we also look at the language that was used in the newspapers. So we use computational linguistics to sort of cross-analyze newspaper articles and the different ways that the actual event is also described to find more information that wasn't available at first. So I look at like census records and track the women and their moving patterns, who they're married to. It's like, I don't know, it's niche, but it's really fun. I feel like an investigator.
That's actually so cool. Like, I want to think about it when you're done with it. Like,
yeah.
Give me an email.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of moving on, sort of still talking a little bit about academic life, but kind of getting in a little bit into sort of the social aspect of campus. Daria, I'm going to ask you to start this question off again as well. But how do students balance social and academic life, and what kind of resources does Emory offer to help with that?
Yes, so in my experience, I found that Emory students are able to strike a very good work-life balance, but I think that is one of the most important things that we're learning to do in college. And like, I by no means feel like I have it all figured out. I'm sure most of the panelists agree that it is always an ongoing process, and right up there with the information we're actually learning how to get that work-life balance is what we're in college for. So, and I think Emory does a really good job of helping facilitate that. And I think Emory students are, as a whole, doing pretty well with that. As far as resources that Emory provides, one thing that I made a lot of use of, especially in my first and second years at Emory, was they send a weekly email every Thursday with just things that are going on in the weekend on campus and off campus. So that's both Emory-specific events, like if there's a play going on or something on campus that you get out and do, that'll be an email, but then also just general Atlanta happenings, just because I was new to Atlanta, had never been to Atlanta before I came to Emory for school. So things like the Halloween parade that I wouldn't have known that if it existed and where it existed, but just the fact that they put it in the email made me aware of it. And then it's easier to like schedule things with your friends. And Emory also makes, well, probably not this semester with COVID, but usually they have a lot of event shuttles to things like that, which would also be included. So I found that email very useful.
Those are the best, those shuttles. I use that so much, my first year especially. Like, it's literally free bus shuttles that will take you to like the event that's happening in Atlanta. So like, I think there was one on like Super Bowl weekend on the Saturday that took you downtown. So I walked around there with my friends and like checked that out, which was like definitely a once in a lifetime experience.
So Ben kind of got us rolling into like the next part of questions, but kind of talking about the city of Atlanta and kind of how do students get into the city? You kind of mentioned the shuttles, but also like how accessible is the city and what do students do in the city? So Ben, can you kind of like just continue that train of thought?
Totally. So what's really nice about Emory is from campus to Midtown Atlanta, which is like the city center of all where everything happens, is literally like a 15-minute drive, like maybe 20-25 with traffic. And there's a lot of ways to get there. So Emory runs its own shuttle system, which is really helpful because they have shuttles that will take you to shopping, anything you need. And they also have shuttles on the weekend that will take you to events that are happening. And in addition to the Emory shuttles, which are completely free, and there's a lot of different lines that will take you to different places, there's also the MARTA, which is like the Atlanta Public Transit, which comes right to Emory's campus. And you can take that, you know, it's a 10-15-minute bus ride to the subway station, and then you're basically right in Midtown Atlanta or downtown. So those are like the two main ways, but there's also so many other ways. In Atlanta, Uber and Lyft are pretty inexpensive, especially when you pool. So a lot of students will take advantage of that to go check out what's happening in the city. And students starting in their sophomore year can bring cars. So sometimes you know someone who has a car. There's also like opportunities to rent bikes for the year and all sorts of other ways. For a while, those electric scooters were popular on campus, but I think that that's over. I'm not really sure. But the point is that there's like tons of ways to get around, and in general, students will like take advantage of it. Maddie will argue like not enough, but that's just because Atlanta is such a great city that there's so much to do and so much to see and so much to take advantage of, and a lot of history there too.
I also wanted to add in, like, Atlanta is like a really close nearby city, but we're also in Georgia, and so we are really close to the Georgia mountains. And so this weekend, like, for example, I'm going apple picking with a couple friends, which is only about like 45 minutes away, which is, you know, something to do, and like you wouldn't really be able to do, like, you know, just in the city. And so there's a lot of other like nature things that you can do. There's hikes, and there's Stone Mountain that's right close by, and so that's a great sunrise hike place as well. And so there's the city aspect, but there's also the nature aspect at Emory.
Just kind of, I want every panelist to kind of just answer this question, but it's also just like a pretty short answer. But like, what is one of your favorite things to do in the city of Atlanta?
Thrifting. I love a good thrift. So there's some really good stores. Yeah.
For me recently, it's been hiking more often. So as someone who, again, coming to Atlanta, I didn't know much about it. We are really close to a lot of really like nice mountains, nice woods, great places to hike. That's both through in an official capacity through Outdoor Emery, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, and also just like with friends getting out there.
I think all the events that happen, like Atlanta has so many like cultural events and like seasonal events. So there's always like something interesting that happens. One of my favorites is there's like a really great fall festival that happens like in Candler Park, which is pretty close to Emory, which is always a fun Atlanta thing.
I really like everything everyone has mentioned so far, but also we have Buford Highway, which is there's like a long strip of road that has a lot of different cultural foods there. So I went to a loud street food restaurant the other day and just tried some new things. And there's a lot of good food options. I'm quite the foodie, so it's great.
I'm not really that big a foodie, but as an Atlanta native, I do have to say I like going and getting food with my friends, especially someone who's from here, having kind of been to a lot of the major landmarks, like just going to restaurants I've never been to, or even like if you ever make it to Atlanta, go to Flying Biscuit. Promise, best grits you'll ever have in your life. Creamy, dreamy grits. Only way to eat them. Only way to eat them, I promise. So good. I don't know if anyone else has been here, but we can go anytime. But kind of moving into our last question about the city of Atlanta. So I'm only going to give this to Dario because he's my Habitat for Humanity co-president. But how do students engage with community service, specifically in the city of Atlanta? I'm going to start with Dario, but of course, everyone else feel free to jump in and share your community service experience.
Yes, so by no means the only, but the best way to engage in community service in Atlanta is through the Emory chapter of Habitat for Humanity. We try to do trips every 2 weeks to a month. We go out on a Saturday, and we spend the whole day working with a family in the area. The Habitat for Humanity program is pretty complicated for how they get in, but it's usually families of veterans or just under lower income families who get houses through the program, sort of. So yeah, what we do is we there's usually a lot of different programs. There's a lot of different tasks going on a single day, which is what I really like about Habitat. So on one day, Amelia could be painting the bathroom, I could be doing the carpentry stuff. And it's really a great opportunity to A, get off campus, do something really fun, B, learn something. So I've learned how to use a lot of power tools from Habitat, which is very fun. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, but that's Habitat. Tons of other opportunities. I'm sure Ben will talk about Volunteer Emery.
Oh, now?
Yeah.
Sure, sorry about that. Yeah, so Volunteer Emery is an organization I'm on the staff of, I'm involved in. And it's really cool because not only is it a student-led organization, but it's also funded and supported by the Center for Civic and Community Engagement, which is an office on campus that has full-time staff who do this professionally and have a lot of guidance. So we partner with tons of community partners, both for short-term and long-term sustainable service. And in addition to that, we do lots of social justice work in facilitating dialogues on campus. But it's really amazing because there's so many great organizations in Atlanta doing awesome service work. And I find that Volunteer Emery and in general, the Center for Civic and Community Engagement does a really great job of trying to engage with them and integrate Emory students with the local communities in the greater Atlanta area.
Anyone else have anything related to community service they want to add, or will start moving on into sort of just campus life and social life? Awesome. All right, so we're going to sort of kick off the questions about campus life or social life related to what is your favorite thing to do on campus? And Heather, I'm going to have you start us off with that.
Yeah, my favorite thing to do on campus is to walk in low water. I think I kind of established myself as someone who loves to go hiking in nature. And so it's really cool that we have low water preserve right by campus. It's only a 5-minute walk from most first year residence halls. And so there's a lake there and there's a walking trail. There's little mini waterfalls and stuff like that. And so it's a great hike when the weather's great, and typically it's pretty good. I just love doing that.
And then I'm going to have just the rest of our panelists also answer that question.
I was going to say low water. I will choose something else. I would say, I've already said that I'm on a comedy improv troupe. We have rehearsals from 10 p.m. to midnight. So I love going to rehearsal on Wednesday and Sundays, and then also the walk to and from rehearsal and just fooling with my homies.
I was going to say low water too, even though I'm copying, it's amazing and it's right next to campus and it's so beautiful and it feels like you're in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, you're in the middle of one of the biggest cities in the country.
I love to just explore campus in general. Even as a senior, this is my 4th year on campus, I'm still finding new places, to buy food, coffee, but also just to study. There are so many good little nooks on campus, libraries that I've never been to before. There's so many great places, and they're not all in the freshman orientation. So there's always new stuff to discover.
I think my favorite place is kind of walking away from low water, because despite being an environmental science major, nature and I are not best friends. I really like the Carlos Museum. For one, it's free for students to access, and it has just really amazing ancient art, so Egyptians and African art, as well as Greek and Roman art. And I think I just love, one time me and my friend, we just took a study break and walked through the museum. And so I think I just really love that there's this really pretty famous museum. King Tut was there at one point, which is pretty cool. Just in the middle of our campus, and students can just go to it throughout the day whenever they want and just walk through and check it out. And I've had classes go in there. I don't know, I just love the Carlos Museum. I'm a sucker for museums, so.
There's a great coffee place on the 3rd floor.
True.
And they also have free fun activities, and so I actually have these little gourds that they have this fire decorating thing, so you could it's a free event, so we just got to burn little designs and gourds from the Carlos Museum.
I always forget they do those free or fun art activities I remember when like the monks were doing the like sand mandala one day, which was pretty cool. It was too crowded to see anything. Oh, go ahead,
The cutest thing is also they have like school groups come. So once I think it was through Volunteer Emery, we had like a volunteer day at the Carlos Museum, and it was like these little school kids coming to like do artwork and stuff, and it was really cute.
Oh, I love kids. Okay, so kind of moving into another part of like student life is student spirit. And so Ben, do you mind kind of like describing what you think Emory School Spirit looks like and just like kicking that off?
Totally. So Emory is a little bit unique. That's what I always preface whenever I give a tour or do a panel, because we don't have a football team. So the school spirit is not built around like this one sport and everyone being excited for it. And I think that's really good. And here's why. It ends up creating a school spirit and culture that is around all the different things that students are involved in. So yes, like students will go to other sports games, but it's not just sports that generates the school spirit. A lot of the time it's these big student organizations that do events. So one of the really popular organizations on campus is called SPC, the Student Programming Committee. And they put on like these huge events that are really like an example of the Emory spirit. So every fall and spring when we're not in COVID, they'll do a huge concert. They'll bring like really big names. My other panelists can help me with who they brought in the past few years because I can't remember, but it's always like really big people. Do you guys remember who?
2016 or something was Post Malone, I think. Like that was the biggest name, I think.
Yeah, AJR was in my first year spring, I remember. And then Waka Flocka, I think was the last year or 2 years ago. Anyway, that's always fun. And they do like tons of events around the center of campus, like every week, all the time. So that's like a real example of a good school spirit.
Awesome. Kind of illuminating on school spirit, and I saw it in the chat, and Ruth said we touch on it in a few. Here's a few. So I'm gonna have all of our panelists answer it. I'm gonna start with Ruth. But what is your favorite Emory tradition?
So I'm in love with the Jimmy Carter Town Hall. It's an event that you're invited to as a freshman and may be invited back to depending on your involvement in certain like activities later on in your college experience. But Jimmy Carter, obviously President of the United States, shares an experience that only 3 other people who are living now experience, I think. And kind of really neat that he's from Georgia. So he comes back to Emory every single year to host the town hall, obviously not happening this year, but answers people's questions and is just like a delightful guy, and just really neat to see that he cares about our community.
I'll just go. I just want to say that I was supposed to eat with Jimmy Carter before Carter Town Hall, Dario and I, and sadly COVID has prevented that opportunity, but it's okay. I only cry a little bit sometimes. But I'll give it to Dario to kind of talk about his favorite Emory tradition next.
Yeah, so definitely less of a tradition, more of just an event, but the farmer's market every Tuesday on like right in the middle of campus. Ton of Atlanta vendors come down to sell everything from like fresh produce. My personal favorite is there is an Indian food station that is just amazing. And all the stations are also on dining dollar plans. So if you have a meal plan, you'll be able to get stuff from the farmer's market. And it's really the highlight of my week because it's just so good to like change it up, just try something new.
To add on, vendors also take debit and credit. So if you're not on a meal plan, you can still buy. I know a lot of like the medical students and like nurses and doctors will stop by and get that as well. And my favorite tradition is the dinner with 12 strangers. And so it's typically like, I think it's Emory alumni that host a dinner at their house and they're in the Atlanta area. And so the hosts and 12 other students will be able to go there and be able to chat and talk with each other. It's a great networking event. I think networking is used a lot in the business realm. And so it was a really great opportunity for me just to meet new people. And for me also, the dinner with 12 strangers isn't just undergraduate students. So when I was there, I met people who are in the master's program at the School of Public Health. I met people in the MBA program. I think there was a PhD student there too. And so it wasn't just like people our age. I got to really learn and talk with people who are like older than me and get a lot of advice as well.
Wow, those are all such good examples. I am a huge fan of Dooley, which I saw someone mention in the chat. Dooley is probably one of the weirdest Emory traditions, but really awesome. It's a skeleton that's our unofficial school mascot. If you want to find out more about it, you can find it online. There's tons of stuff about the myth and legend of Dooley. But Dooley has her own week, or now I guess Dooley is now a he because Dooley takes the gender of the president. So now we have a new president. And Dooley's week is just like an awesome time where we have a big concert, and Dooley can come to any class and ask the professor a series of trivia questions. And if the professor gets the questions wrong, and these are like hard questions about Emory, like the number of bricks on a building, like crazy things that no one would know. And if the professor gets the question wrong, then the class is canceled. Like it doesn't matter if you had a quiz or a test or anything. Hasn't happened to my classes yet, but there's still 2 years, so fingers crossed.
Happened to me during quarantine.
Okay, I think my favorite Emory tradition is Songfest. So Songfest is something that we do every year for our first years, being in a first year residence hall for all 4 years of my college experience. Sadly, we're not doing it this year. We're doing like a kind of different version. But the last 3 years I've been a part of it, and it's kind of just like this big, Maddie Simon loves Songfest with me. It's kind of this big hall tradition where you recreate the lyrics like really popular songs. So like in the past, my hall has done like Bodak Yellow and like I'll Make a Man Out of You from Mulan, talking about like why your residence hall is like the best and why all the other ones kind of are not. And my hall has never won. It's fine. Like we were gonna win this year. That's why COVID happened, so that Dobbs couldn't take the crown. But anyway, no one else is in residence life other than Heather, so she knows what's up. But yeah, Songfest is just like one of the first opportunities you really get to like meet people from your hall and hang out and talk and kind of just do this ridiculous tradition, but it's so much fun. So that's kind of all of our favorite traditions. I do see some questions coming in the chat, just as like a friendly reminder. Some of them panelists may or may not answer, but if you have a question, send it directly to Maddie Simon so they can get it to me to ask. Just because I'm not really looking through the chat very much. But kind of moving on, still kind of talking about students, but I think a question that is kind of relevant is, what is the political culture on campus like? And I'm gonna have Ben start off that question for us.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I'll be completely honest and frank with you guys. So of course, like any college campus, I would say like young people typically are a little bit more left-leaning. And so I would say that overall, that would be the feel of Emory, but I think it's really different than a lot of other campuses in that there's a really vibrant, multi-partisan culture on campus, and a culture really of open expression and of dialogue. And so there's political groups from across the spectrum that run events. And there's a lot of really cool programming that's done that sort of bridges political gaps. One of my favorite organizations on campus is called Bridge Emery, which is started by 2 friends of mine. And it was started out of conversations around Israel and Palestine a couple of years ago. And it's kind of morphed into this organization that encourages civil discourse on topics. And I think that's like the best example of what Emory is, because people have strong opinions and people are generally politically engaged, but I think people are really interested and willing to have conversations in a way that I think is honestly unique to other college campuses.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Does anyone have anything they want to add? Okay. So kind of going into probably one of our last questions before we all say like why we chose Emory, something that I'm going to have Ruth start us off with, but I think kind of plays into Ben's, what he was talking about how like active students are and how engaged they are with one another. How do you believe that Emory promotes diversity and inclusion? And is there an event or time where you felt like you engaged with a background that was really different from your own?
Yeah, I would say, oh gosh, there are a lot of examples of diversity on campus. The one that I guess comes to mind for me, I guess I've already talked about interdisciplinary studies, but then I can talk about definitely religious diversity. I started out on campus going to like Catholic mass, and I met friends that had very different political views than I did while I was there, and I feel that we were able to study biology and like talk about things that were very different. Like we just held very different beliefs, and yet we got along very well in a lot of other respects. Specifically, we were like best friends for like go-to study buddies for biology, and yet just held extremely different beliefs about the Catholic Church. Like, granted, I'm no longer like Catholic, so I think, and like we're still friends, so it's fine. One example.
Anyone else have one they want to share?
I have one relating to housing and just campus life as a whole. So last year I was a sophomore advisor, which is kind of like the sophomore version of an RA. But my building had a themed housing floor. And so everyone, it was the Black Male Initiative, and everyone there identified as a Black male along the African diaspora. And I just learned a lot because they were, I mean, there's essays there who were part of it, and they held an event for us, like a showcase, not for us, but they held a showcase and stuff like that. And everything, like the conversations they held were really amazing. And one of my, I was a tour guide trainer last year, and one of my tour guide people, Miles, he's on the floor, and he taught me so much about his experiences, you know, like academically growing up in a low income area, and how he has really struggled to get to where he is now, and just had a lot of great conversations with people on that floor because of that opportunity through housing.
Okay, so that's kind of the end of our questions. We're gonna go into the biggest one I think everyone wants to always know is why Emory? And so we're gonna start off with Ben and kind of just go into Dario after that.
Yeah, so I come from Canada, as I've told you guys, and we don't really have the same culture of the liberal arts here. People really apply into a very specific program. So I was really looking for a school that would really celebrate people learning all sorts of different things and learning with each other regardless of their major. So I applied regular decision to Emery, and I applied to a lot of other schools, and it really wasn't, and all of those schools, including Emery, checked off my boxes. And I'm sure all of you have those lists of, these are the things I want in a school, and that was great. But it was only once I got into Emory that I went and spent the weekend at Emory and at a couple of other schools when I really made that decision. And that's really the core of my why Emory. And I spent this weekend at Emory and stayed with current students at the time and felt so much warmth and so much love. And people were around campus that I didn't know would see me and recognize that I was a prospective student, and they would talk to me and ask me how I was doing and show genuine interest. And it made me feel part of the community. And I was like, I want to spend 4 years here. And it was such a great decision because that sense of warmth that I felt and that sense of kindness really, I think, is so core to what Emory is and who the people are that go to Emory.
My journey to Emory is a little similar to Ben's in that, like him, I was a regular decision applicant. Not gonna lie, I shopped around, I considered my options. I came to Emory for a spring open house day, which I really hope we'll be able to have. That is truly the highlight of my ESA tour guide year. Yeah, so I came for a spring open house day after I was already accepted, and my tour guide gave me a piece of advice that I like to pass on to all my tour groups now. He talked about how you're in class for like 3 hours a day here. So, and all the people who look at colleges, at least when I was looking at colleges too, until he told me this, I was really focused on like academics. What is my school life gonna look like? What classes am I gonna take? What extracurriculars will I join? But there's really so much of college that is outside of the classroom, outside of any structured activity. And he told me to walk around and people watch, which I love to pass on to tour groups. And I really hope that everyone will get an opportunity to really just walk around Emory and look at the people. These aren't just gonna be your classmates, you're moving here for 4 years. You're kind of stuck with the student body of where you go. And when I walked around Emory, I saw people that I didn't just want to go to college with, that I wanted to be friends with and hang out with for the next 4 years. And I think I made a great decision.
Similar to me, to Dario, my tour guide made a big impact on me for coming to Emory. So a little different from Ben and Dario, I actually applied early decision 1. So I got in, was pretty much set by December. But my decision process coming up to that was that I'm from like a really an area in North Carolina where there's a lot of good colleges. So there's UNC Chapel Hill and Duke University. So a lot of people back home always ask me like, why would you go, down to Atlanta if you could have just gone to Duke or something? And for me, I think there's just the community of people that I met while I was on my tour, junior year of high school, and especially my tour guide, like just talking to him, hearing about his time here at Emory and learning that like people at Emory, it's not as much of a competitive environment that people, obviously everyone's striving to do their best, but it's really just the people around you are trying to build you up as they try to do their best as well. And so for me, even now, like 3 years here, I've really just experienced that like everyone around me is trying to support me and encourage me to be the best student, be the best person I can. So I just really love the community and the people around me.
I guess why I came to Emory is, again, I think very different from all of your journeys as well. I am a Questbridge student. For those of you who don't know what a Questbridge student is, you apply through like a different application. It's due in September, and then you match with certain schools. You like rank them in the match. So I was a match with Emory in December of my senior year, which is still just feels so unreal and has just been a dream since. My family, I have 10 siblings, do not have the financial like stability to send me to college. So now I get to like take that off of my family's shoulders, and all through like to credit Emory University for endowing me with this opportunity. And I would also add that Emory has the largest Questbridge chapter of the Questbridge chapters of the 40 schools across the nation. So that was the largest reason I picked Emory. Honestly, it was warm weather, this large chapter. I was like, I got to shoot my shot here. Wonderful school. But I stayed for, I feel like so many other reasons. I could not see myself anywhere else. Living at Emory has been a dream.
Yeah, I think I'm in complete agreement with Ruth, and just like can't picture myself anywhere else. I'll do mine super quick. I always preface that mine is, I knew exactly two things about college. I wanted to go as far away from Atlanta as possible, because that's where I'm from, and I wanted a school that had a major in education. Emory is neither of those things. I'm 4 miles from my house and majoring in environmental science. And I think the reason that I stayed is really, one, because of just how amazing the student body and the faculty is. Everyone here wants to make a difference, wants to make a change. The work that students do while they're on campus, when they get off campus, even as like students in the research that faculty do, people here want to change the world and they want to make it a better place. And for me, being in that kind of space is just amazing. And then I think the second is Emory's diversity. And I think that plays into this idea of making a difference, is people want to engage with difference. They want to learn from others. They want to know different people. And so for me, being at Emory, like I always say, it wasn't about the amazing academics that I would get, but the person that I would become being here. And I think that's why I love Emory so much, is more about the person that I've turned into. And so that concludes our panel. I want to say thank you guys all so much for joining us. Just a couple closing remarks. I noticed there's still a lot of questions happening in the chat. Feel free to go on to the Emory Welcome to College, and you can pick out any of the panelists here or any other panelists that you see based on major or hometown, and ask them any questions that you might have. You just kind of send them a direct message and we get it and we will respond back. So again, any one of the panelists here or any of our other 200 amazing student ambassadors that we have. In addition to that, I want to plug the Maddie and Maya show on the Emory Admissions Instagram. They do it every Thursday. It's actually super fun. You guys should definitely check it out. I one time showed up, even though I knew all the answers to the questions. But those are kind of just like the general things. Thank you guys all so much for joining us. Feel free to contact any one of us through Welcome to College, and definitely check out the Emory Admissions Instagram. So I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day, and bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Bye, y'all.